The U.S. and U.K. launched strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen for their repeated attacks in the Red Sea. Iran strongly condemns the strikes, raising fears over an expansion of the Israel-Hamas war. Washington sanctions Russian entities for their involvement in North Korean weapons flowing into Russia. Kyiv, meanwhile, says a North Korean short-range missile that Russia used earlier against Ukraine turns out to be a KN-23. With the Youth Winter Olympic Games just a week away, we take a closer look at what's being done in the country's eastern Gangwon province as it gets busy preparing for the big event. It's January 12, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with the widening crisis in the Middle East. The U.S. and U.K. have launched strikes in Yemen, targeting Iran-backed Houthis for their repeated attacks in the Red Sea. Iran has condemned the strikes, raising fears over an expansion of the Israel-Hamas war. An Song-jin starts us off.
Tensions have escalated further in the Middle East after the U.S. and the U.K. launched airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi military targets in Yemen. The attack on Thursday local time is a retaliation against Houthi drone and missile attacks on ships passing through the Red Sea. The U.S. and the U.K. targeted the group's military infrastructure, weapons storage, and air defense facilities, while Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, and Bahrain supported with logistics. The U.S. military denounced Houthis' actions as, quote, illegal and dangerous, and said that they, quote, will be held accountable. There are now concerns that the presence of the U.S. and U.K. may further escalate the regional crisis. Iran was quick to rebuke the airstrike, saying that it further, quote, fueled insecurity and instability in the region, and added that further action should be prevented in fear of a wider war. Houthi military officials responded by calling the airstrikes foolish, while Saudi Arabia emphasized the need to further avert military attacks. Eyes are on Iran as to whether this will further trickle into a U.S.-Iran war or remain a proxy conflict. Meanwhile, South Korea, the U.S., and 8 other countries issued a joint statement that affirmed the priority of shared commitment to instigate stability and demobilize further military action that threatens global trade. The ongoing regional crisis escalated as the Houthi militants began attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea and Suez Canal in support of Palestine in the Israel-Hamas war. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
And Iran has seized a U.S.-linked oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman as part of a feud with Washington over the confiscation of Iranian oil on the same tanker, seized by the U.S. last year. Shin Ha-young has more.
The Iranian Navy seized an oil tanker, the St. Nicholas, in the Gulf of Oman on Thursday morning local time, according to Iran's state-run Tasnim news agency. The media outlet reported that the action was taken in compliance with an order from an Iranian court and was allegedly in retaliation for the confiscation of the same tanker and Iranian oil by the U.S. last year. According to the BBC, the oil tanker was in transit between the Iraqi port of Basra to its intended destination in Turkey when it was boarded by masked gunmen who ordered that the vessel's course be altered toward an Iranian port. There is believed to be 1 Greek and 18 Filipino nationals aboard as crew members on the Marshall Islands flagged ship. The location of the seizure is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route for major oil production countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and Iraq. 1/3 of the world's natural gas consumption and 1/6 of the world's oil passes through the region. In response, the White House strongly condemned the action and urged the ship's immediate release.
The Iranian government should immediately release the ship and its crew. These provocative and unacceptable actions need to stop. We'll continue to work with our allies and partners to deter and confront the full range of Iran's concerning and destabilizing behavior in close coordination, of course.
Iran has previously warned of a strong response to the conflict in Gaza, as well as the assassination of a Hezbollah leader and airstrikes on Iran-linked facilities in Syria. And with attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels on ships passing through the Red Sea, the capture of the St. Nicholas is expected to further intensify tensions in the region. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Moving on, 3 Russian institutions and 1 individual have been included on Washington's list of sanctions for their role in making available North Korean weapons for use in Ukraine. Kyiv says a North Korean short-range missile that Russia used earlier to attack Ukraine turns out to be a North Korean version of Iskander. Our Kim Jong-sil has the latest.
The U.S. State Department has imposed sanctions on 3 Russian entities and 1 individual involved in the transfer of North Korean ballistic missiles to Russia, which used them against Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a statement on Thursday, said the U.S. will not hesitate to take further actions.
You see, Russia is the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, so the UN Security Council is kind of dysfunctional at this moment. So these countries, NATO, South Korea, Japan, and United States cooperate with each other and put more sanction on both Russia and North Korea.
Both Moscow and Pyongyang denied the arms transfers, but the South Korean Unification Ministry says such transfers are evident.
Despite repeated denials from both Russia and North Korea, the arms transfers are an evident fact. Such arms deals are a violation of UN Security Council resolutions and a legal act that disrupts international order.
The deputy spokesperson added the arms deal must be stopped immediately. Kyodo News, citing the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, reported on Friday that the wreckage of a missile by Russian forces on January 2nd in eastern Ukraine turned out to be a North Korean short-range ballistic missile. The authorities said the missile is likely a KN-23, or also known as the North Korean version of Iskander, the name of Russia's short-range ballistic missile. A South Korean expert said the KN-23 is a conventional short-range ballistic missile which has a range of about 600 kilometers.
The Ukrainian authorities are claiming that the missile is North Korean-made because when they analysed the wreckage, it was larger in diameter than the Russian Iskander missile.
The expert added that the military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow will likely accelerate in the future and that it could affect not only the war in Ukraine, but also the security on the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea's new foreign minister Cho Tae-yeol called on Japanese companies to help resolve the issue of wartime forced labor together. In a press briefing on Friday, he said he hopes Japanese firms could, quote, ride on the same boat to settle the long-standing historical issues that stem from the Japanese colonial rule of Korea before and during World War II. His remarks come after the South Korean government last year announced its plan to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's forced labor using funds procured through a public foundation instead of from the Japanese companies responsible. Over in Taiwan, voters there will be heading to polls tomorrow as the world watches to elect a new president who will lead the island for the next 4 years. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has more on what's at stake and how the election will affect U.S. China relations.
Voters in Taiwan will head to polls on Saturday in an election that could put it on a collision course with China, which has long claimed the self-governed island as its territory. Beijing has kept military pressure on Taiwan in recent months, sending fighter jets, drones, and warships near the island. For the past 8 years, Taiwan has been led by current President Tsai Ing-wen, a member of the independence-leaning Democratic Progressive Party, who cannot run again because of term limits. 4 years ago, Tsai won a landslide victory, but this year, recent opinion polls show the ruling party candidate is only ahead by a narrow margin. The ruling DPP candidate William Lai Ching-te has called for voters to choose the right path to keep Taiwan's democracy strong.
China's desire to swallow up Taiwan was the country's national policy as they strive for world hegemony.
If the DPP wins, it will be making history by winning a record 3rd straight term in power. And if that happens, China will likely increase military action around the Taiwan Strait even more, while also possibly imposing economic sanctions against Taiwanese exports to China. Meanwhile, Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang or KMT, favors closer economic ties with Beijing and has said the voters face a choice between war and peace. Its presidential candidate, Ho Yu-ih, says he will be able to engage in dialogue with China, which he says his opponent isn't capable of.
I abide by the Constitution of the Republic of China, uphold Taiwan's democratic and free system. I oppose one country, two systems, and I oppose Taiwan independence.
If the KMT wins, it will mean a relatively higher level of stability around the Taiwan Strait. But this may come at the expense of a slowdown of its relations with the U.S., which has been warming up in recent years. And this year, a third party called the Taiwan People's Party, or TPP, has also entered the race and stands somewhere in between the two dominant parties. The result of this week's election is expected to signal where U.S. China relations are headed, as Washington has been showing support for the self-governed island. A non-resident fellow at U.S. think tank the Atlantic Council, who's currently in Taiwan, says a change in relations between China and Taiwan from this election could affect how the U.S. and China manage their ties, as Taiwan is a crucial partner to Washington, both diplomatically and economically.
Taiwan is an indispensable partner to the U.S. broader regional Indo-Pacific strategy. And that's also, Taiwan is also being a major producer of leading cutting-edge technologies such as advanced semiconductor chips, for example. So if China-Taiwan relations warm up significantly, including warming up economic ties, that may create challenges in terms of how U.S. is strategically and economically de-risking and hedging against China.
With Washington ready to work with both Taipei and Beijing to avoid escalating tensions, regardless of which candidate wins, all eyes are now on how the outcome of the election will reshape global politics. 배은지, Arirang News.
Exports are projected to support Korea's economic rebound this year, but lackluster domestic spending and mounting geopolitical tensions may hinder growth. Moon Hae-ryun has the latest government assessment.
South Korea's economy overall is showing signs of recovery, with sharp growth in exports and more stunted growth in facility and construction investment and private spending. The Economic Green Book released by the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Friday showed that while inflation is slowing and semiconductor exports are increasing, external conditions are continuing to contribute to economic uncertainties.
Economic uncertainties continue with geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine, and there are mixed expectations of improvement in the IT industry and concerns about a weakening global recovery.
December 2023 saw an overall growth of 5.1% in exports compared to the same month the year before, on the back of a recovery in South Korea's tech industry. Outbound shipments of chips increased by 13% on year, while ship and car exports jumped by 47% and 18% respectively. South Korea's exports performed well generally in the final month of 2023, as more than half of the country's 15 key export sectors saw a rise. The start of 2024 also saw a rebound in exports to China for the first time in 20 months. Consumer sentiment also showed an improvement, with the Consumer Sentiment Index rising by more than 2 points compared to November. The on-year increase for consumer prices recorded in December was the lowest seen since July, at 3.2%. That being said, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending, fell by 0.3% on year. Retail sales in South Korea have been declining since the second quarter of last year, and while consumer sentiment was high in December, the government predicted that it was the major discount events for vehicles and other items that contributed to the high CSI. The price of fruit led an upsurge in prices, with oil prices on a downward trend in line with falling global crude oil prices. Facility and construction investment saw a decline on year in November, while production slowed for the service industry. The Finance Ministry said it would continue to manage potential risks, such as real estate project financing, and prioritize recovering price stability. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In the U.S., consumer prices rose higher than expected in December on the back of housing and healthcare expenses. Lee Sun-kyun has more.
U.S. consumer prices rose 0.3% in December, higher than the market expectation of 0.2%. On a 12-month basis, U.S. CPI rose 3.4%, also exceeding market expectations of 3.2%. Core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, also rose 0.3% for the month and 3.9% year-on-year. However, the on-year core reading was the lowest since May 2021. The larger-than-expected gains in consumer prices come on the back of rising shelter prices and healthcare. Shelter prices rose 0.5% for the month and accounted for more than half the core CPI increase. On year, shelter costs rose 6.2%, or roughly two-thirds of the rise in inflation. The U.S. Fed believes significant progress has been made in stabilizing prices, but the current interest rate level will have to be maintained for the time being. However, Fed and market consensus has been split on the number of rate cuts in 2024. While the Fed believes there will be 3 rate cuts in the year, markets expect 6 rate cuts this year. Meanwhile, on the first day of Bitcoin ETF trading in the U.S. on Thursday, prices of Bitcoin rose sharply before dropping back down. According to American cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, the price of Bitcoin exceeded $49,000 on some exchanges in the early trading period, but fell back down to the 46,000 range later in the afternoon. Citing experts, a CNBC report said that Bitcoin prices will go down for the time being due to profit-taking. The second largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, Ethereum, also saw a sharp increase in its price. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approved the listing and trading of Bitcoin spot ETF, with trading beginning on the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. Lee Sun-kyun, Arirang News.
Back in this country, the Cultural Artists Solidarity Association have urged authorities and the media to change following the death of actor Lee Sun-kyun. In a press conference on Friday, 29 culture and art groups and some 2,000 actors called for change to prevent similar death in the future. At the time of his death, Lee was being investigated for alleged drug use. He had insisted on his innocence and had been tested negative for drugs. Director Bong Joon-ho of Parasite led the press conference and called for a clear investigation to discover the truth behind Lee's death, as well as a revision of the law to protect cultural artists. He also requested media outlets to delete articles that do not fit in the purpose of journalism and invade privacy. Time now for our weekly arts and culture segment. We have our culture correspondent Song Yujin in the studio. Welcome, Yujin.
Happy Friday, Jungmin.
Happy Friday. What do you have for us today?
So, Jungmin, do you remember that trip I made to Gangwon, the province, last month to check out the preparations of the Winter Youth Olympic Games Gangwon 2024?
Of course I do. You even brought this cute mascot doll. Wasn't it Mungcho?
Right. The name was exactly right. And it turns out that there's exactly 1 week left until the game's opening ceremony. So yesterday, I got the chance to tour some of the game venues and also listen from the directors of the opening ceremony. So for this week, here's a glimpse of what you can expect at Gangwon 2024.
Get ready to meet the future stars of winter sports. There's just a few days to go until Asia's first Winter Youth Olympic Games kicks off in South Korea's Gangwon province. 1,900 athletes aged between 15 and 18 years old will compete in 15 disciplines across 7 sports. Emphasizing sustainability, the Games will mostly reuse the venues from the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. The Gangneung Ice Arena is once again the stage for curling, figure skating, and short track speed skating. The nearby Gangneung Hockey Center will host ice hockey as well as 3-on-3 ice hockey, a Youth Olympic exclusive discipline.
So this is the Gangneung Oval, which will host the speed skating events as well as the opening ceremony. Now, just a month ago, this oval had concrete floors because it had been used as a film studio and an exhibition hall after the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. But now, as you can see, the floors are gleaming white with ice, ready for the games.
There's no need to worry about ice quality as the International Olympic Committee gave the rink a green light when it conducted ice-making tests last March. But before the Games, the Oval will first be the stage for the opening ceremony. In charge is Apollo Yang, the executive producer of the opening and closing ceremonies of the Pyeongchang Olympics. Despite its smaller size and budget, the message is anything but small.
Our theme, Let Us Shine, puts the spotlight on each and every athlete participating in the Games. They're all the main characters, and the future holds infinite possibilities. We're aiming for a youthful, modest, yet vibrant ceremony that reflects the dreams and dynamism of teenagers.
And for the first time in Olympic history, Gangwon 2024 will feature a digital cauldron using cloud computing. This again links to sustainability.
If we were to use the traditional cauldron, we would need to use gas. As we've become more conscious and aware about the environment, we wanted to try something new.
As excitement builds, Gangwon 2024 is gearing up to inspire and entertain athletes and fans around the world.
You know, Eugene, there's a saying, well begun is half done.
Right.
Could you tell us a bit more about what Gangwon 2024 has in plan?
Right, so the opening ceremony follows a story of a girl named Uri who lives in Gangwon province. And as you know, Uri means us or we in Korean and really shows the game's hopes of creating a stage where everyone can live together regardless of ethnicity, race, or generation. So Uri travels to space as her dream is to become an astronaut. And during this story, the ceremony will feature performances by Korea's ambiguous dance company, famous for their collaboration with band Coldplay, the band 이날치, known for their hit song Tiger is Coming, and also emerging K-pop groups like Triple S.
Looks very exciting, that sounds. And I heard something about the opening ceremony stage.
Right, so the main stage of the opening ceremony will be shaped like a runway. This is to really make sure that the teenage athletes feel that this is their moment during the Parade of Nations. And the opening ceremony is interesting that it will also be broadcast live at the Pyeongchang Dome in Pyeongchang. And the directors say this is to really show that Gangwon 2024 continues the legacy of Pyeongchang 2018. But if you can't make it, you don't have to be disappointed because you can always enjoy all the other events until February 1st, which are all free of charge.
All right, that was a nice report. Thank you, Jin.
Thank you.
The air quality had been poor for 3 days due to smoke from overseas, but it seems like the ultrafine dust moved away this afternoon. Tomorrow, all areas are expected to have good to normal levels of ultrafine dust. Tomorrow will be perfect for a weekend outing with clear weather and temperatures exceeding the season average. However, on Sunday, it will gradually rain or snow all over the country, starting with the central and northern regions in the morning. After the rain stops, winter cold is expected to appear early next week. Strong winds of around 50 meters per second will blow around the eastern parts of the country by tomorrow morning. In particular, strong waves are expected to hit the East Coast tomorrow. Those who visit the coast for the weekend should pay attention to any potential safety accidents. Tomorrow's Seoul and Daejeon will start off at -5 degrees Celsius. Most regions will see sunny skies for the daytime. Gwangju and Daegu will reach 8 degrees. Gyeongju, Busan, and Jeju, 10 degrees Celsius. Colder air will move in early next week, but there's no need to worry about a severe cold snap. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.